the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Tanzania. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin, and this is a continuation of Series 20 on the 2023 African Cup, played in 2024. We have done a full and short version on the groups and teams, and are now looking at the players of each team, this episode covering Tanzania's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. So part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. And part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. We think that will be in early January. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we compiled today and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover a few other things that I'll talk about at the end of this mediacast. Tanzania is one of the teams that did not reach the 2021 African Cup, so we didn't do a media cast on their players yet. We'll thus be doing a full version of their players here, unlike the updated version that we're doing for teams that were part of the previous Cup. Before we begin, we'll make a brief note on what Soccer Files is doing. We have made a separate video on what we'll be covering over the next 9 months. YouTube watchers can see the link to that on the screen here, and it can also be found in the show notes for both watchers and listeners. In short, we've just completed our series on the groups, teams, and players, or part one of the players of the 2023 Asian Cup, and since then have been focusing on the 2023 African Cup. We had already completed the groups and teams media cast for that, and are now coming to the end of the players. This is actually the last one, or part one of the players media cast. Both of those tournaments take place in early 2024. We've also started coverage of World Cup qualifying for 2026, and we will turn our attention to that once these tournaments are done. So this episode will have 3 parts. After this introduction, we'll move into section 1, which is some general information on the team. And the main section, section 2, where we compile the list of candidates and their likelihood of making it. And then section 3 will feature our spotlight review, where we predict the starters for the team. And we have any closing thoughts and a preview of part 2. So let's begin then. And the most recent appearance of Tanzania in the African Cup was in the 2019 edition. And that was the first edition which had 24 teams, so it afforded teams like Tanzania a bit more opportunity to make it. So they did for that one, but not for 2021. The next thing we'll look at is their recent games. So when we judge the participation of the players and their likelihood of making it, we base it mostly on their participation over the past 2 years. So it behooves us to go through the games and see what they've done. And also there's some games that we don't add to the count. So let's do that. Beginning in March, or beginning at the start of 2022, their first games were in March. That was 2 friendlies. Following that, they had the first 2 of the 6 African Cup Nations qualifiers for this tournament. And that was in June 2022. And then July to September 2022, they played 4 games for the African Nations Championship qualifiers. We don't count those among the participation of the players, though, because it is limited to players who play in Africa. That's the eligibility criteria. And some of the players don't play Actually, a lot of Tanzania's players do play in Africa and are eligible for the tournament, but even some of those senior team members don't play in this tournament. Okay, so we don't count those 4 games, but we do count friendlies. They had 2 of those in September 2022, but unlike other teams, didn't play any in October and especially November. So following that, their next game was in March 2023, where they continued the qualifying games for this tournament. So that was 2 of them in March 2023, 1 game in June 2023, and 1 game in September. They didn't have any friendlies in between those 4 games. Again, some other teams did. October 2023, they did have 1 friendly, and that was it until November 2023, where they began their World Cup 2026 qualifying campaign, as did all teams in Africa. So 2 games there, and that's it. So that is the total number of games. Let me see what the total is there. Sorry, 13 games then that we're counting as the participation. The last thing we'll do here is look at the formation, so you can kind of envision as we're going through the players. So their usual formation is a 4-2. No, this isn't the usual one. This is the one they began with in the early part of the period, a 4-2-3-1 formation. However, after that, it was mostly a 4-3-3 formation. Near the end, they came back to a 4-2-3-1. That was in the second last game. But they did experiment a bit with formations at the end there. And for the third last game and the last game, they had 3 central defenders at the back, with the left back and right back pushing up to the midfield. So 2 different formations there. One was I won't get into it, it's not necessary. So I would recommend thinking of them more as a 4-3-3 formation, since generally the midfield is just one line of defensive and central midfielders, rather than the 2 lines of, say, a 4-2-3-1. Okay, that is the end of section 1. Let's move on to section 2, the candidates. And so we begin with managers. Let's go back to 2019 when they last reached the Cup. And we have Emmanuel Amunike as the manager. He is a Nigerian player turned manager, and coached them through the Cup. He resigned after losing all 3 games in the 2019 African Cup. They were unfortunate in being grouped with the 2 finalists, Algeria and Senegal, and they even looked good in their other game against Kenya, although they lost. He resigned after the tournament, Amunike, but a different source says that it was by mutual consent. Nevertheless, Tanzania went through a string of 5 managers after that. 2 of them were Kim Poulsen, a Danish manager, so he failed to qualify them for the 2021 African Cup, but he continued on after that until 2022. He returned later that year, Tanzania having gone through 2 managers in the interim, and managed from late 2022 then till 2023, when he was replaced by the current manager, Adel Amrouchi. So we'll remove Amunike from the list now, and we see Amrouchi's name is in grey, which means he hasn't been through a tournament. He's certainly been manager of a lot of national teams, though. Prior to Tanzania in 2023, he was with Yemen and Botswana and Libya and Burundi and Kenya and Equatorial Guinea way back in 2004. So he also has managed some club teams during that time. Too. He's Algerian, so the club teams he managed, at least recently, were in Algeria. last club team he managed was 2018 and 19, so he's been an international manager since then, and he will be leading them through the tournament. And we'll come back at the end when we do the spotlight review, or you can kind of track it yourself to see whether there are problems on the team enough that they would consider replacing him. It would be a last-minute replacement, but we have seen that for a couple of teams in Africa. Let's go to the goalkeepers then. Beginning with the just listing the candidates. So again, if their name is in black script, like Aishi Manula here, it means they have been through a tournament. And if it's in gray, like the other likely candidate, Beno Kakolanya, it means they haven't been through a tournament. We have two possible candidates as well, Kwesi Kawawa and Matacha Nata. Okay, I'm just correcting the graphics there. So let's take a look at these candidates. Firstly, Aishi Manula. As we said, he was part of the African Cup squad in 2019. In fact, the starter, at least in games 1 and 2, but he was replaced by the possible candidate here, Matacham Nata, for game 3 there. Manula has been with the team since 2015 and has 59 caps. He's 28 years old, and we won't mention the club unless it's significant. He plays for Simba in Tanzania, and that, along with probably Azam FC and Young Africans, are the 3 biggest clubs in Tanzania. Otherwise, we'll just mention it if they play, if it is a club maybe outside of Tanzania that is significant. Okay, next we have Beno Kakolanya, and he has been with the team since 2002. I think he played some local tournaments there because he was on the team prior to 2022. In fact, returned after a 3-year absence in September 2022 to start 4 of their remaining games, and was on the bench for 5 others. So probably also on the bench before 2022, and getting a look in on the team with 4 starts. He is 29 years old, by the way, and those 4 caps are his only starts. The first of the 2 possible candidates, Kwesi Kawawa, got his first appearance on the bench very recently in November of this year, 2023, and started the last of their remaining games and was on the bench for the other one. So a latecomer to the fray. The 22-year-old Kawawa plays for Karlsund in Sweden, and he actually was born in Sweden and has been with Swedish clubs. Finally, we have Metacha Nata, and he was the backup keeper in 2019. We saw there that he started game 3. He was with the team since 2019. So when he was called up there, he was brand new to the team. He hadn't earned a cap prior to the tournament. He's 25 years old, and he started the first 2 of their games during the period we're looking at, so that would be March 2022. And after that, he was on the bench for 5 and not selected for 6 others, including the last 2 matches. So kind of drifted steadily off the team over the past 2 years, but may return for the cup. So we have 2 definite 2 likely candidates, Aisha Manula and Beno Kakolanya, and then newcomer Kawawa and Matacha Manata. And let's summarize the position. So as we saw, Manata started the first 2 games, but in March 2022, Manula came in for the first of the African Cup qualifying games and basically played the first of those games. He was replaced in the last 2 African Cup qualifiers by Kakolanya, and also for 2 of the 3 friendlies surrounding that. So Kakolanya making a bid to be the starting keeper. Manula did come back and start the first of their World Cup qualifying games, but if we were looking for any clarity in the second, we just got confusion by newcomer Kawawa being the starter for their most recent game. So very much up in the air as to the pecking order amongst the goalkeepers here. Manula seemed the starter up until recently, but then Kakolanya made a strong challenge, and Kawawa starting the last game kind of confused the issue. So we'll have to see. Let's move on to the defense and begin with central defenders. So here we have 2 definite candidates. None of the players we're going to talk about here have experience in the Cup. So the first one is Bakari Mwamnyeto, and the second is Dixon Job, who often plays as a right back. We also have a likely candidate in Ibrahim Hamid, and then 2 possible candidates, Abdi Banda and Lusajo Mwakenda. Sorry, my copy and paste isn't working. There we go. And we have 3 candidates. We'll just mention these by names and perhaps bring them back up if they do make the squad. The first one is Abdul Razak Mohammed Hamza, and then Abdul Malik Zakaria and Kennedy Juma. So we won't go into detail on them, but we'll catch you up if they make the squad. We have kind of 2 outgoing players. I said they didn't have any veterans from 2019 here, so we'll just make quick mention of David Montika. He was a starter in the 2019 African Cup, but didn't appear for the team after that. And Kelvin Yonadi, also starter, at least for the first 2 games, and did continue playing afterwards, but last appeared on the bench in March 2021. Okay, so let's take a look at the candidates here. Bakary Mwamnyeto, the first of our definite candidates, has been with the team since 2019 with 36 caps, so he's been playing a lot. Wasn't a consideration, though, for the 2019 squad, and is now 28 years old. So he has started 10 of their 13 games over the past 2 years, but there were 3 matches that he wasn't selected for. Nevertheless, we consider Mwamnyeto a definite candidate. The other one is Dixon Job, and he has been with the team since 2021 with 23 caps and 1 goal. He's 23 years old, and he started 12 of their 13 games over the past 2 years, and was on the bench for the last match. So a definite candidate. And I'll just point out that Job and Mwamnyeto both play for Young Africans in Tanzania, so are probably used to playing together. Also playing for Young Africans is Ibrahim Hamid, our likely candidate, and he got his first cap for the senior team in March 2023 and started all 7 of their remaining games. So he is 26 years old. So those are the 3 main candidates. We also have Abdi Banda, a possible candidate who's been with the team since 2014 with 20 caps and is 28 years old. And he was selected for the preliminary squad in 2019, but didn't make the final cut. Was actually off the team after that and returned after a more than 4.5-year absence in June 2023, but just started 1 game. But he was on the bench for the last 4 matches, so he looks like actually a likely candidate to be brought. We have him as a possible, probably not a starter there. The other possible candidate, Lusajo Mwakenda, had been on the bench for 5 of 6 games at the end of World Cup qualifying, but since then started only 1 of their games and was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1. So he had been more of a figure before the start of this period, just before the start of this period, but now in this period has not been selected for 9 of their 13 games. So he's 23 years old, so may come back into the picture down the road more. Okay, then 3 of our possible but unlikely candidates, and I'm just looking at the ages of the veterans of 2019. One of them, Mwantika, is 35 years old. The other is 39 years old. So we don't expect to see them back, and I won't put them on the list. Let's look at the position then. Sorry, I will put the possible but unlikely players on the list. And let's look at the position. So it was Mwamnyato and Job, predominant in the early part of the period. Each of them was replaced a couple of times, but by players who are now off the team. In the middle of the period, Hamad replaced Job and then became the starter alongside Mwamnyato, who was fairly consistently there, especially in the second half of the period. Job continued to be on the field, though. He basically became a right back and came back only into central defence towards the end when they used a 3-man central defence, so all 3 of them playing one game there. The other 3-man defence, it was Mwikenda who joined. This was his only start for Lusajo Mekwenda, and it was an unfortunate one because it was against Morocco and he scored an own goal 53 minutes into the game, which pretty much, it was the second goal of a 2-0 loss, so it didn't go well for him there. Overall, we see Mwamnyato and Hamad as the starters, but Job may come back into the central defence if they find a right winger. Okay, let's move on to left backs and look at the candidates. So we have Novatus Miroshi, who actually plays all over the field, and we have he's a definite candidate. Sorry, and then we have 3 possible candidates in Mohamed Hussein, Nixon Kibabaj, and Charles David Luhendi. So let's take a look at these candidates. Novatus Miroshi has been with the team since 2021 and started 11 of their 13 games over the past 2 years, not selected for 2 matches there, and is only 21 years old, but really inserting himself into the team. He plays out of country. He was with a youth team in Israel, Maccabi Tel Aviv youth team there, and after that he moved to Zulte Waregem in Belgium. Not a big team themselves, but he was loaned to Shakhtar Donetsk in 2023 and is currently with them. They are a big team, so he is building his resume nicely there. And as I said, Miroshi not only starting as a left back, but in other positions on the field as well, as we'll see as we go through the players here. Next we have, actually I'm going to put Kibabaj ahead of Mohamed Hussein because he seems to feature more. So we'll cover Nixon Kibabaj there, and he's been with the team since 2019 and has 14 caps. He's just 23 years old and has started 3 of their 13 games over the past 2 years. And was on the bench for 4 of them, but not selected for 5 matches. However, the games he was on the bench for were the last 4 matches. So it seems to be becoming a bigger part of the team, Nixon Kibabaj. Next, we have Mohamed Hussein, and he was a member of the squad in the 2019 African Cup, just a substitute, but he did appear, actually only appeared in Game 3 as a starter. He started and finished that game, but otherwise was on the bench. And Mohammed Hussein is a bit of a veteran with the team since 2015 with 37 caps, and he's 27 years old, and actually was a bigger part of the team at the end of 2021. He started 7 games in a row, and I believe those were World Cup qualifying games. But since that time has only started 3 of their 13 games, on the bench for 1 and not selected for 9 others, including the last 4 matches. So really seems to have drifted off the team over the last 2.5 years, Mohammed Hussein. Finally, we have Charles David Luhendi, and he has been with the team since 2022. He started 3 of their games, and I don't have information on him. I know he didn't sub into any games, but I don't have information on how much he's been on the bench. However, I don't think he's been called up recently. Charles David Luhendi. So really, Nixon Kibabic, the main name among the possible candidates here. Let's review them. We have definite candidate Novatis Miroshi, and then 3 possible candidates, Kibabic and Hussein and Luhendi, both of whom seem to be off the team recently. And let's look at the narrative for this position. So it was actually Kibabic in the first 2 games in March 2022, and then it was Hussein in the next 2 games, the African Cup qualifiers, the first 2 of their 6, and then Luhendi in the following 2 games, which were friendly. So only then did Miroshi come into the position. He played 3 of the 4 African Cup qualifying games. Hamid replacing him. Is that central defender Hamid replacing him in one of those? Anyway, Miroshi continued after that, mostly in the left back position, but he did play left wing. Oh, okay, he played left wing in 2 of the 3 games when they went to a back 3 formation, but he has actually played further upfield, as we'll see. So Miroshi, a definite candidate, and probably the left back here. Let's move over to the right back, and we have a likely candidate in Haji Noga there, and then one possible candidate in Kibwana Shomari, and a couple of players who seem to be who are possible but unlikely. First is that veteran Shomari Kompombe, and I will talk a little bit about him. The other is Israel Patrick Mwenda, who we'll just put on the list here and come back to only if he makes it. We also have a couple of veterans off the squad here from 2019, and one of them is Gadiel Kamagi, and he's only 27 years old, so a slight chance of him coming back, although he hasn't appeared since 2019 actually, so probably well off the squad. The other is Hassan Kessi. He started and finished all 3 games there, and I have them both starting as a right back, so there must be a mistake there. Anyway, one of them probably started in a different position. Hassan Kessi, also young enough to return to the team. He's 29 years old, but he too has not appeared for the national team since 2019. In his case, it was November 2019, so he did continue on to the Cup after the Cup for a while, but both of those have been off the team since 2019, so I'll actually remove them from the list here. Okay, let's look at the candidates that are possible. Haji Noga, and he is born in England and has played for clubs in England. He's on the roster of Portsmouth since 2018, but actually has been loaned out to smaller clubs over that time. currently with Aldershot in England. He got his first cap for Tanzania in March 2022 and started 7, including the last 4 of their remaining 13 games, and was not selected for 6 others. So 21 years old is Haji Mnoga, and also has been seen in different positions, I think, especially as a defensive midfielder. Next, we have Kibwani Shomara. So he is also quite young, 23 years old, and got his first cap in 2021, but started 4 of their 13 games over the past 2 years and was on the bench for 3, but not selected for 6 games, including the last 4 matches. So maybe off the team, Kibwani Shomari. Not to be confused with Shomari Kapombe. He's our possible but unlikely candidate. He's been with the team since 2011 and has 76 caps and 1 goal. Is 31 years old, and he was selected for the preliminary squad of the 2019 African Cup. But didn't make the final cut. He did come back into the team, and over the past 2 years, just subbed into 1 game and was off the squad for the other 12 matches, including the last 5. So he seems to be off the team, basically. Okay, that is it. Let's look at the candidates. It's Haji Mnoga as a likely candidate, Kibwani Shomari, a possible candidate, and a couple of possible but unlikely candidates in Kapombe and Mwenda. Okay, let's look at the position. So it was Mnoga in the first 3 games, beginning in March 2022, and Shomari in the 3 games after that. However, they didn't seem satisfied with either of them, really, because it was central defender Job who took over the positions, and he played all games in that position, except when they used a 3-man backline. When they used a 3-man backline, at least for one of the games, Job went back into that backline, and Mnoga was the player who came in as the right winger. So basically moving upfield to the right wing. As I say, I think Mnoga has been used also as a defensive midfielder in a couple of cases, and it is defensive midfielders who we move on to. Nice transition there, hey? We move on to the midfield in general and to defensive midfielders specifically. So a real mess here. So this is going to be a little tough to do when I summarize it, but let's look at the candidates. So for defensive midfielders, we have Faisal Salam as a possible candidate, and then we have Ali Msengi as a possible but unlikely candidate, and we have just want to make mention of veteran Erasto Nioni, who is a centurion for the squad, 108 caps and 7 goals since 2008, is 35 years old now and last played in November 2021. He was part of the African Cup 2019 squad. We'll put him on the list as seemingly off the squad because, especially given the situation here, I wouldn't really be surprised to see him invited back in. We have seen players 35 or older called up to national teams. Okay, we'll take a look at these players here, beginning with Faisal Salam. So again, one of the players who was a consistent starter in 2021, but he has dropped off the team. He is one of the players who was on the squad for the 2019 African Cup, started 2 games, games 1 and 3 there. And has since started 4 of their 13 games, only 4 of them, subbing in for 2 and on the bench for 1, but not selected for 6 matches. So he's 25 years old with 32 caps since 2018, Faisal Salam, but we have him just as a possible candidate here. Ali Msengi has not played for the last 5 matches. We'll just leave him as a name on the list and talk about him more if he is named to the final squad. And we did talk about Erasto Nioni as a seemingly off the squad, but with a sliver of a chance of coming back. However, we won't do the summary of the position until we've looked at the central midfielders here. So let's move on and look at the candidates coded as central midfielders. We have three likely candidates. The first is Mudathir Yahya, and he also was part of the 2019 squad. He was a starter in all 3 games there and has been with Tanzania since 2015 with 25 caps. He's 27 years old, and over the past 2 years he was actually off the team for a while. He returned after an 18-month absence in March 2023, and then started 3 of their remaining 7 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3 others. So upon his return, he's been consistently selected, though starting less than half the games. So looks more of a bench player at this point. Yes. Okay, next we have Ben Starkey. Ben Starkey, another player born in England and playing for clubs in England, but with small clubs. Alfreton is the club where he is now. That was actually a new name to me. I think I've seen one other player in all of the teams on that squad. He got his first cap by Starkey in March 2023 and started 2 of their remaining 13 games, and was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 8. So actually just 3 of the 13 games that he wasn't selected for. So we see him as a likely candidate. The 2 games that he started were actually the first 2 games of the period. So he hasn't been fielded much for the team at all. The third likely candidate is Sos Peter Bajana. And Bajana got his first appearance in March 2023 and started the last 4 of the remaining 7 games there. Was on the bench for the first 2 of those and not selected for just 1 of them. So kind of coming into the starting lineup at the end is Sos Peter or Sos Peter Bajana. Oh, I'm afraid I didn't finish introducing the candidates. So it was 3 likely candidates: Mudathir Yahya, Ben Starkey, who we've just done, and Sos Peter Bajana. There, we also had 2 possible candidates in Zamiru Yassin and Charles Mbomboa, and then 1 possible but unlikely candidate, Baraka Majigoro. So sorry about that, and let's look at the possible candidates actually appearing on the field just as much as the likely candidates here. Zamiro Yassin has been with the team since 2019 with 47 caps, and he's 27 years old. Not selected for the even the preliminary squad in 2019, but among the players here, he has started the most. 8 of their 13 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 1. And not selected for 4 matches. But the reason we have him at the possible level is the last 2 matches were among those that he missed. So that leaves us in a bit of doubt as to his possibility of being selected. The other player is Charles Mbomboa. It's M''M at the beginning, so I'm not dead sure how to say that. He's interesting in that he plays for MacArthur FC in Australia. And he has an interesting background, which I will say. He and his family fled from Congo DR, where he was born. And they lived in Tanzania for more than 10 years and then moved to Australia. So he was actually with a youth club a couple of youth clubs in Australia, kind of came up through their system, currently with one of their bigger teams, MacArthur, and has been with Tanzania now since 2023, 25 years old, so a bit late in joining the team. And he got his first cap in November, so just recently, and started both of their remaining 2 games. So actually looks like a decent candidate as a starter, but it's maybe a bit too soon to say. That's Charles Mamombwa. I think I did a little better that time. Okay, and the final candidate, the possible but unlikely, we'll just leave it at the name level, Majagoro, and talk about him if he comes back into the picture. So now we can summarize the defensive and midfield and central midfielders together and talk about the Messi position. We have defensive midfielders, possible candidate Faisal Salam, and possible but unlikely Ali Nsengi, and a slight chance of Erasto Nyoni coming back into the picture. And then central midfielders, 3 candidates, Yaya, Starkey, and Bajana. And then 2 possible candidates, Yasin and Mamombwa, and then possible but unlikely Majagoro. And let's take a look at these situations. So really a snake nest of candidates, as if we don't have enough here, we have players coming in from different positions. And it's a situation that they really haven't settled there. It started with 5 different players over the 2 games in March 2022, and out of position players Miroshi and central defender Job were among them. And in fact, it was the left back Miroshi who carried on into the African Cup qualifiers, where he was paired with 2 different players. One of them was the attacking midfielder Himid Mao Mkami. And Mkami actually appeared regularly for a little while. He and Yasin made a pairing for a while. And when it was a 3-man midfield, Yaya sometimes joined them. Finally, we saw towards the end, Bajana appeared more. And we also saw right back Ngona showing up for 1 game, as well as very recently Charles Mbomwa showing up for the last 2 games there, although I think one time he was in as a right winger rather than a central midfielder. So amidst all of the players, it's only Yasin who really has played enough to be considered a possible starter here. But even he played 8 of the 13 games, so missed 5 of them, and was not selected for the last 2 games. So very unclear in the midfield, and it has been all the way since the beginning of the period in 2020, from the beginning of 2022. So I tried to make that a bit simpler, but it was very difficult with single players coming in and playing 1 game and then not playing anymore. And honestly, it's not that different on the left wing, although we're talking about 1 position instead of 2 to 3 positions. I'll just say quickly that even though they sometimes use a 4-3-3, they don't have any candidates coded as left or right midfielders. So it'll be the defensive midfielders or central midfielders, or sometimes other positions playing as left and right midfielders. So we can move on to the upper end of the field and look at the left side of that. The position includes left wingers and left midfielders, and even left forwards when it's a 4-3-3. So let's look at the candidates. We have a likely candidate in Kibu Dennis, and sometimes he is called Dennis Kibu. So the sources are not clear on what his first and last name actually are. We also have a possible candidate in Abdul Hamisi Suleiman. And we have a player off the squad, Faridi Musa, who last appeared for the team in June 2022 and is 27 years old, so still a candidate, young enough to be a candidate. And he was actually selected for the 2019 African Cup, Musa, where he subbed into game one and then gained a starting position for games 2 and 3. So a possibility, or a low possibility, of him returning to the team. Let's look at the more likely candidates, though. First of all, likely Kibu Denny, and he has started 3 of their 13 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 1, but not selected for 6 matches. So he's 25 years old and has 16 caps since 2021, and yeah, just on the edge of likely, between likely and possible there for Kibu Denny. The possible candidate, Suleiman, started 1 of their 13 games and subbed in for 3 and was on the bench for 2. And there were 7 matches that he wasn't selected for, including the last 2. So Abdul Hamisi Suleiman is 22 years old and has 9 caps since 2021. And all of these players playing in Tanzania. So in summary then, likely candidate Kibu Denny, possible candidate Abdul Hamisi Suleiman, and a small chance of Faridi Musa coming back. We'll summarize the position. Actually, the main candidate here is the forward Samata. And Samata was quite steady, regardless of the formation, in the first third of the period. When he was replaced, it was mostly out-of-position players in a single appearance, including the left-back Kibabic. Denny was tried out in the last 2 of the African Cup qualifying games, but obviously they weren't satisfied with him because he didn't last in the position. It was attacking midfielder Abraham and the central midfielder Mamombwa in the last 2 games there. So very undecided in this position. Samata was there, but it's moved out of the position. And really no one has seized the position after he left. Okay, let's move over to the right side. Oh my goodness, I put the players in the wrong positions on the graphic, so I'll just take a little time to fix that. Okay, we're done. We're close to done. Okay, let's move over to the right winger, right attacking midfielder, and right forward, the upper right quadrant of the field. And here we have a definite candidate in Simon Msuva. And that's it. We have a candidate who seems to be off the squad. So I'm just going to look and see if he should be on the list. He's Thomas Ulimwengu, with the team since 2010 and 51 caps. He's actually only 30 years old. But he was selected for the 2019 African Cup and last appeared in March 2021. So very unlikely there. Although is young enough to return, we'll put him at seemingly off the squad. And we'll look at the one candidate that we have, Simon Msuva. So he's a big name for the team. He was a starter in the 2019 African Cup and has been with the team since 2012 with 87 caps and an impressive 21 goals. And he's 30 years old. And he was playing for Kabylie in Algeria. That's the country that the manager is from, actually. But he's unattached since December 2023. So I wonder if he's thinking of this tournament as kind of an advertisement for his next club. He's played, after moving out of Tanzania in 2017, has played in Morocco mostly, but also in Kuwait recently. So Msuva, Sorry, I'm a bit lost in my script. He had scored a lot of goals in qualifying campaigns, even if they didn't reach the tournament. So he was the top scorer in African Cup 2021 qualifying and scored two of their three goals in qualifying for this tournament, as well as goals in World Cup 2022 qualifying. So Msuva, a big name, as I said, for them, and really the only candidate here. So we can summarize the position, whether it's left winger, left attacking midfielder, or left forward. Msuva is fairly consistent in the position, and when he has missed, it's been different players replacing him. Including, quite oddly, the left back Miroshi, coming over from the other corner of the field, the adjacent corner of the field, to play as a right winger. Okay, that is it for the midfield, and we move on to the forward position. We begin with attacking midfielders here, and actually Simon Msuva is coded as an attacking midfield. Other sources have him as a forward, but we've put him. We haven't changed his coding, but we have put him as a right kind of attacking midfielder here because that's where he's been playing. So we won't put him on the list among attacking midfielders, even though he is one. We begin with a familiar name, though, Himid Mao Nkami. We saw him playing quite a bit in the central midfield. And we also have Maurice Abraham as a possible candidate. Nkami, by the way, is a likely candidate there. And then we have another possible candidate in John Raphael Boko. So let's take a look at these candidates, beginning with Himid Mao Nkami. I say his full name because in some sources they call him Mao, and in others Nkami. He was selected for the African Cup in 2019 and actually was a starter in game one, but he lost his starting position and was just a substitute in games 2 and 3 there. He started 6 of their 13 games over the past 2 years and subbed in for 3, but was not selected for 4 others. And as we saw, most of his starts have been in the central midfield. He's a veteran with the squad since 2013. He has 68 caps and 2 goals. And Nkami, I'm going to call him, is 31 years old and plays for Al Gaish in Egypt. He's been with actually several Egyptian clubs since 2018. So Nkami, a likely candidate. The first of the possible candidates is Maurice Abraham. And he's very young, just 20 years old, and got his first cap in June of 2023 and started 2 of their remaining 5 games, subbing in for 1, on the bench for 1 and not selected for 1. And he plays in Serbia for Spartak Subotica there, and actually was with their youth club as well. So Maurice Abraham just coming into the team, but at this point a possible candidate for us. John Raphael Boko is much more of a veteran. He's 34 years old and has 84 caps for the team since 2009 and 16 goals. So a big name for the club in the past, but not so much now. He also started and finished game 1 in the African Cup in 2019 and lost his starting position, just like Nkami there. And he has started none of their 13 games over the past 2 years, but he has subbed in for 1 and no bench appearances. So just came in once as a sub over the past 3 years, and that was in their 4th last game. So he has missed the last 3 matches, but 12 of them overall. So actually probably unlikely stage. I think we put him as possible because of his strong history with the team. So he may be brought along for his experience. So those are the candidates. Himid Mao Nkami, the likely candidate, Maurice Abraham, and John Raphael Boko as possible candidates and we review the position. So the attacking midfield, and we're really talking about central attacking midfield here, was used in the 4-2-3-1 that they favoured at the beginning of the period. But the only player stationed there more than once was defensive midfielder Faisal Salam, which is not as strange as it seems, because Salam is coded secondarily as a secondary striker, so does have an attacking side to his game. And actually, if we think about Nkami's role in the central midfield, at first I was a bit surprised to see an attacking midfielder appearing to be in a more defensive formation. But if you think about the 4-3-3 that they've used, or even the 4-4-2, it seems like it's possible to have an attacking midfielder in the center of the midfielder to support the forwards. So maybe it makes a bit more sense seeing him in the central midfield as often as we do. Okay, that is it. We don't have any players coded primarily as secondary strikers, so we move on to the forward line, and we have met Mbwana Samata as a left winger in the first part of the period, and he is a definite candidate here. And we have three possible candidates in Joshua Mwakasaba, but I have seen him called Ibrahim Joshua on at least one source. The other two possible candidates, George Mpole and Clement Mzizi. And then we have a couple of possible but unlikely candidates in Kevin Pius John, or Kelvin, sorry, not Kevin, but Kelvin John, and then Saeed Khamis, who again on some sites is called Saeed Khamis Saeed. Possible but unlikely. Actually, one more as well, Adi Yusuf. And then two players off the squad. Rashid Mandawa is 29 years old, but has been off since the 29 African Cup, so we won't put him on the list. And Yahya Zaid, just 25 years old, but also hasn't appeared since the 2019 African Cup, so we'll leave him off the team for the time being. But again, if he comes back onto the squad, we can talk about him more. Let's deal with the candidates that we have here. Mbwana Samata, so he's the captain of the team, and he's been with them since 2011 with 75 caps and 22 goals, and he's 29 years old. He is now with PAOK in Greece since 2023. He was with Fenerbahce in Turkey before that, and EPL fans may remember him from his brief time with Aston Villa in 2020. So a good resume for him. He was the captain of the team in 2019 and started and finished all 3 games there. And has started 10 of their 13 games since over the past 2 years, subbing in for 1 and not selected for 2 others. So Mbwana Samata, a definite candidate. Next we have Joshua Mwakasaba, and he got his first cap in March 2022, has started 2 of their remaining 13 games, and subbed in for 1, and on the bench for 5. Not selected for 5 others. So quite possibly a bench player coming in as a well, he was only subbed in for 1, so a bench player. Next is George Mpole, and he has been with the team since March 2023. He got his first cap for the senior team at least, and started 2 of their remaining 13 games, subbed in for 3 and not selected for 8 others, including the last 2 matches. So George Mpole also a possible candidate. And finally, we have Clement Mzizi, and he got his first cap recently in September 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 4 games. and was on the bench for one, and also not selected for the last two matches, just like Empoli. So the two possible but unlikely candidates, Kelvin John, he has not appeared for the last six matches, and Saeed Kamas Saeed for the last five matches. So it looks like a bit of a dearth of candidates up here. So really, we have just Moana Samata as the definite candidate, and then three, Mwakasaba, Pole, and Zizi as possible candidates, and Kelvin John and Saeed as the possible but unlikely candidates. So, and sorry, Adi Youssef, also possible but unlikely, also missing the last four matches. Youssef was part of the 2019 African Cup squad as a substitute, but hasn't played for them. Or has stayed on with the team, but hasn't played for the last four games. So, again, he doesn't really add to the candidates because teams usually bring around four forwards, I would say, and a lot of them come in as substitutes um, uh, later in the game. So that really seems a lack of forwards here. So it seems actually that Samata moved from the upper left of the field as a left attacking midfielder or left forward about a third of the way through the period we're looking at, and moved to become the centre forward. Perhaps because the players they used were not working out. They even used Simon Nsuba, who would seem like a good candidate, but he got a red card in his only appearance as a centre forward. Actually, I think he did appear there once more since, but I'm making a bit of a comedy of it. But it does seem like they don't really use Nsuba even in this position. Besides Samata, Kelvin John and Georgian Pole here were tried and basically discarded as candidates. Towards the end, it was almost always Samata, but recently they tried right winger Denny as a sole forward. That was in the last game, and then and then Samata, who was on the bench for the last game, came in 55 minutes in and replaced him. So it doesn't look like he was a satisfactory candidate either. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the building the list of candidates. And now we move on to section 3, where we have a couple of orders of business. But the first one is our Spotlight Review, where we almost tongue-in-cheek try to predict the starters. I say tongue-in-cheek because we always are surprised that things don't go the way we think they're going to go. But anyway, this is our kind of view of it. Going into the cup here. So we have a manager, Adel Amrouche, Algerian manager, who we're going to put as a likely candidate here, but we're not dead sure that he won't lose his job before the end. Probably not, but we do see some problems on the team, especially in central midfield and positions like left wing. And goalkeeper, really, where, as you'll see, there's a lot of indecision and or problems. So Adel Amrouche, the manager, likely will lead them through it, but we don't think it's definite. One of those positions that's a bit of a problem is goalkeeper position. So we have actually three candidates. We'll just put two of them on. Two likely candidates in Aisha Manula and Beno Kakolanya. And Manula seemed to be the starter, but recently Kakolanya has been making a bid or a bit of a challenge for the position. And we were confused in the last game when they brought in a different player to play the last game. So we're not really sure. We can't be confident there. Central defenders, we're quite confident about Bakari Mwamnyato as a definite starter in defense. Not so sure about who's going to be alongside him. Recently, it's been Ibrahim Hamad. But the reason it's been Hamad is because the other candidate, Dixon Job, has been moved out to the right back position. So we think Dixon Job is actually a definite starter, but he might start as a right back rather than as a central midfielder, in which case Hamad would probably be the starter. So we put Dixon Job also as a likely candidate on the right side too, as a right back. But we'll come to that. We'll deal with left back too first, where there is a definite candidate. We're quite sure it's going to be Novatus Miroshi in the left back position. The other candidate, apart from Dixon Job on the right side, is Hajmi Mnoga. Hajmi Mnoga, who could be the starting right back if Dixon Job moves back into central defence. The central midfield, though, is really, I got to say, a mass of players coming in and out. We can't begin to even say one who will be a possible starter there. So we're just going to leave that one alone. Left wing is not dissimilar. It was actually the forward Samata starting there for the first third of the 2 years that we looked closely at, but then he became a forward, as we'll soon see, and they never really did settle on a left back. So we don't even have a candidate to put forward there as a left winger. On the right wing, though, we're quite confident that it's Simon Msuva starting on the right wing. And central attacking midfield, they don't use the position that much, and there are no players in that position who strike us as being likely starters. So that just leaves us with the forward, Mbwana Samata, who we're confident will be the starter in that position. But a bit of a lack of candidates in the forward line and actually in other positions on the field. Okay, that brings us to the end of the Spotlight review, and the last order of business is to preview part 2, which we'll do when the squad lists come out. So at that time, we'll look at the selections, basically the list that we compiled in this mediacast, and see which players made it and which players didn't. And we'll also give an update on injuries. I don't remember any injury concerns for Tanzania players, but there may be by the time we get closer to the Cup. So that completes part 1, and we hope you join us for part 2. We originally planned to tag on our past, present and future plans for the mediacast, but we have instead decided to put a link to that 10-minute video in the show notes. It covers what we're working on and what we plan to do over the next 9 months. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.